Black cats and witches are the perfect magical team. But where did this legendary bond begin? Well, when you know why witches have black cats, or really why black cats have witches, let's face it, your cat magic can feel even more powerful. And a lot of people think that witches and black cats are just a pop culture idea, but you're about to learn the real, fascinating story behind their connection. Coming up next. Welcome to the Witches Studio. I am, of course, Mickey Mueller, author, illustrator, and witch, not necessarily in that order. And this is the first in a two-part series about cat magic. In part two, we're going to go into how to work with your cats in your witchcraft, but the deep history and folklore presented in this video is the firm foundation for understanding and working within the partnership between magical humans and their feline friends. So if you're not already subscribed, hit that button so that you don't miss part two. All cats, and of course black cats, have been associated with witches for ages. But how far back can we go to find the root of this association? Well, the earliest physical evidence of a friendship between a human and a cat comes from a burial site unearthed in 2004 on the Mediterranean island of Cyprus. And this dates back 9,500 years, where the human and the cat were buried together. The first cats adopted by humans were likely African wildcats in the Fertile Crescent around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. And yeah, the evidence points to cats likely initiating the relationship with humans themselves, basically self-domesticating. We did not go out and find them. They found us. So that lore of the cat distribution system may be older than previously imagined. If you're a witch who enjoys science like I do and really want to nerd out on the most ancient ancestors of modern cats, like the ones found in Cyprus, I highly recommend the excellent and very entertaining series by zoologist Lindsay Nicole called The History of Cats That We Know Of. I will link the playlist up here, and it will also be in the description below. There's no witchcraft in that series. It's all science, but totally fun. While I was working on the notes for this video, she uploaded a new video in that series called How Cats Became Our Gods, which I was totally excited about. And so I popped over to double check a couple of my references and make sure they were accurate. The consensus is that the first development of human agriculture created a new food source for rodents, which in turn attracted wildcats to the human settlements to hunt for easy prey. The arrival of these charming, soft creatures with their little bean toes and their needle claws would have helped protect the humans from diseases carried by the wild rodents, bites from dangerous snakes, and also protecting the abundance of the granaries from the rodent raids. While I won't suggest that these people all identified as witches specifically, they did generally have long-held traditions of magical thinking they used to explain the world around them, as evidenced by findings like cave art, ritualistic burials, amulets, magical stuff like we all collect. These suggest a desire to influence the natural forces and communicate with spirits and ensure survival through ritual spiritual practices. And many of these practices, when humans were hunter-gatherers, continued and shifted with the invention of agriculture. And that, of course, is when cats first became part of human communities. So etymologists have theories that trace the roots of the English word witch to the Proto-Indo-European languages through words like wek, meaning to choose or to consecrate or to separate, pointing to the transformative aspects of magic and to our need to affect the world around us. And another likely root is the Proto-Germanic word weg, believed to mean full of life and strength, possibly related to working rites of healing and the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. These were some of the communities who were benefiting from the presence of cats in their daily lives. Of course, cats until very recently were thought to have been first domesticated in ancient Egypt, even though that site in Cyprus I talked about earlier is older. The Egyptians, however, took it to the very next level. Egyptians revered cats. Some say worshipped them. And as an example, harming a cat was a serious offense. When a cat died in the household, the family would shave off their eyebrows in mourning and as a public display of grief and reverence. Many cats were honored by being mummified after they crossed over. And don't forget the occult connection of cat goddesses that were part of the Egyptian pantheon. Bast or Bastet, who appeared as a black cat or a goddess with the head of a black cat, and Sekhmet, her lioness sister. So cats were now cemented as both family and magical ally. But it wasn't just the Egyptians. Cats were also appreciated in the Greco-Roman cultures. Hecate, the goddess of witches herself, is probably the oldest written mention of a witch and a black cat team-up. Most famously being associated with dogs, Hecate joined her forces with a midwife who had been transformed into a cat as punishment for defying Hera. In fact, there were lots of ancient cultures who had associations with cats and magic. In China, the agricultural goddess of fertility, Li Shou, was depicted with the head of a cat. The Norse pantheon had Freya, queen of the Valkyries, and her chariot was pulled by 2 cats. Cats were celebrated in ancient Japanese art and folklore and embodiments of good fortune and guardians. Those traditions still exist today. And no one really knows for sure how old the stories are of the Celtic legend of the cat She. But there's oral traditions of this mystical spirit black cat with a white spot on its chest, likely inspired by the huge Kellis cat of the Scottish Highlands. Leaving a saucer of milk for the cat She on Samhain night, the precursor of Halloween, of course, was supposed to bring good luck to the home, but trying to harm it would bring a curse. I could probably do a whole video on the cat She, maybe I will. Anyway, over time, the cat She legend became blended with stories of witches and the belief that the giant fairy cat could shapeshift between a witch form and a cat form 9 times during its existence. And this was the continuation of the cat and witch connection, as well as the root of the story of cats having 9 lives. By medieval times, Christian monks were adding Celtic knots and drawings of cats to the margins of their illuminated manuscripts, while also shooing their little ink-covered toe beans off of their workspaces. Meanwhile, cats were also cohabitating with the wise and cunning people who were healers, midwives, and herbalists. The people who practiced some forms of folk magic often lived in more rural areas. They may have been considered witches or at least pagans, depending on the communities in which they lived. Rural areas were often the last to give up pagan beliefs, deities, and feast days. The Christian churches began to grow in power and worked to demonize those practices in order to bring people over into the fold of the church. Through all that social change, cats were living the good life with the country-dwelling outliers, still hunting pests and enjoying companionship with their folklore-minded humans. Cats soon became associated with the old pagan religions and those people who identified as or were rumored by others to be pagans or witches. Cats were treated with even more suspicion by the Middle Ages, along with those healers and witches they tended to live with. But why? Society in Europe was brewing a culture of fear as economic hardships, religious and political instability created tension. Those in power needed a group for the masses to blame their misfortune on. The church leaders and political authorities targeted those people living on the fringes of society, putting herbal healers, midwives, widows, all kinds of other disenfranchised people using magic or not, and their rural cat companions in the crosshairs as scapegoats. Witch accusations were also a way to settle grudges, seize property, and such, so the witch hunts were firmly underway. Pope Gregory IX wrote an official letter known as a papal bull called Vox in Rama. It was a weird, dark fan fiction describing fanciful satanic rituals. In it, he declared that black cats were the actual incarnation of Satan. Well, this stoked even more fears of people having cat companions, especially black cats, and sometimes that was enough evidence just to persecute someone or prosecute someone as a witch. It has been suggested that the mass killings of cats during the Middle Ages worsened the Black Plague. And yes, many people who feared cats as symbols of witchcraft and the devil killed an awful lot of cats. But did it influence the Black Plague? Well, that's disputed. First of all, the papal bull was over 100 years before the Black Plague. And recently, some experts suggest that the Black Plague would have spread anyway. And we do have evidence that it spread equally in areas not influenced by the Pope. However, it's also true that cats do keep rodent populations down. And they've been doing it since they first met humans back in the Fertile Crescent. So we also know that wild rodents can spread multiple diseases, and the fleas that use rats as primary hosts and spread the plague are different than the fleas generally found on cats. So you'll have to decide what you think. But there is some controversy about the correlation of the killing of cats and the Black Plague. Either way, however, by the time the plague had subsided, it had taken its toll on the economy. Fear mindsets and witch hunts became even more prevalent throughout history and so accurately distilled in a quote from the musical Wicked. The best way to bring people together is to give them a real good enemy. Or two in this case, those accused as witches and their black cats. Large-scale witch hunts in Europe and America finally ended in the 18th century, partly because economic and societal stressors had subsided somewhat, and people began to focus more on reason and science. And legally, it had been decided that spectral evidence would not hold up in court. The black cat, however, still carried the weight of superstition and was still connected to witches. Those ages-old connections kept figures of cats and witches connected until we eventually see them depicted together, chumming it up on Victorian Halloween cards during the rise of the spiritualism movement. The Victorian era ushered in an age of science and technology. But it was also a time when people became fascinated with the supernatural and found these images of witches and their cats absolutely charming. Cats were still treasured companions by many, and while still viewed as a method for pest control, they were also becoming a symbol of luxury and refinement by the wealthy elite. And although some of the superstitions remained, cats in art transitioned from being scary demonic figures to representing intelligence and independence. The Victorian celebrations of Halloween embraced the figure of the witch and the ever-present black cat, becoming intrinsic symbols of Halloween to this very day. The partnership of the witch and the cat are seen together in supernatural pop culture as well. As an example, Pyewacket, the Siamese cat, played a pivotal role as Kim Novak's familiar in the 1958 film Bell, Book and Candle. The black cat and witch trope made the cat an important part of modern stories about witches, like Sabrina, Hocus Pocus, and Kiki's Delivery Service. We see cats, and many of them black cats, incorporated into modern fashion and decor, and cats are often associated with the practice of modern witchcraft. We even see images of cats included in modern magical tools, including a tarot deck that I created with author Linnea Weatherstone. and that would be Mystical Cats Tarot. Yeah, I'll leave a link for that in the description. So superstitions about cats still prevail even in our modern times. I was warned earnestly by a couple of people when I was a young mother that a cat in the home would steal my baby's breath. Spoiler alert, it did not. Many people still believe it's bad luck for a black cat to cross your path. I've heard of people even being afraid to see a black cat, and the roots of those superstitions go all the way back to the belief that it's either a witch or a witch's companion, and a deep mistrust for both. It's not all bad news for black cats, however. They're also believed to bring good luck in many cultures, many believing that they ward off baneful spirits, bestow happiness on your home, and bring wealth. In fact, in some areas in France, black cats are known as money cats. In Japan, there's a belief that a single woman who owns a cat will have good luck finding a love match. Cats generally have a lot of interesting bits of folklore attached to them. Sailors loved having cats on their ships. Feline friends provided companionship and hunted the wild rodents on the ships, protecting both health and food stores. They were considered good luck by sailors and credited with bringing fair weather. In fact, there's a whole form of weather divination known as illuromancy. According to this folklore, when a cat washes its face, fair weather is ahead, but washing behind their ears can foretell of rain. A playful cat with the zoomies might mean a storm is brewing, and a cat sleeping with its paws all tucked in like they do, that's a sign of cooler weather coming. If a cat sneezes, that's also supposed to mean rain in the forecast. In addition to weather, there's a folklore belief that a cat washing their face means company is coming. So lock the door and turn off the lights, my fellow introverts. So in the Netherlands, it's thought that cats are gossips. So people often refrain from secretive conversations in front of their cats. Cats are also considered good luck to have in theaters. And in case you haven't heard of it, the cat distribution system is a modern bit of folklore that suggests the universe assigns cats to people when they are ready to receive them, often through unexpected circumstances. It's really just a bit of fun, and if you're looking for a new cat in your life, overcrowded shelters are a great way to find a new feline companion. Also, many animal shelters report that black cats are more difficult to home. The old superstitions and the biases around black cats, specifically in the Western world, has caused them real harm. Many shelters don't allow black cats to even be adopted in the month of October for a couple of reasons. First of all, troubled individuals sometimes want to harm black cats using Halloween as a sick excuse. But more often, they pause black cat adoptions to prevent people from using them as Halloween props, only to return or abandon them later. People should not allow negative stereotypes surrounding black cats or cats in general to scare them. Just like all cats, each have their own personalities and are a blessing to have in our lives with lots of love to share. Modern witches often enjoy magical relationships with cats. Feline friends of all shapes and sizes and colors can be a link to the natural world and the deep history of magic. After all, cats and witches, we've been through a lot together. Cats can teach us balance, independence, and are naturals at walking between the worlds, as a true witch's cat. Okay, since you stayed till the end, I have an interesting personal story for you with a funny video clip too. I started doing research for this video originally in 2023. Life kind of got in the way, and now here I am a couple years later pulling this one project off the back burner to share with you. While I was in the beginning stages of planning this series, I had a comment on one of my social media posts that sent me down a rabbit hole doing research. A big thank you to Chris Lopez, caretaker of a whole clouder of black cats herself, for reminding me of Hecate's connection to cats. So I meditated on it and I asked her to show me more about her connection with cats. So it was only a few days after I dug up and read a bunch of different versions of stories about Hecate and the woman who became a cat that our lives became about a pound more feline. As they say, be careful what you ask for. So my husband was walking our post-surgery doggo girl, and her name is Freya, queen of the cats, big surprise there, with a big donut on her neck, when a little lynx point Siamese kitten came out of nowhere and befriended our dog and walked with them all the way home together, just strutting along right into our house like it was her house. And here's what transpired. So Dan and Freya went for a walk. He texted me that a cat has been following them, apparently made friends.
It was walking right beside me and the dog. People who were driving by were looking and staring like, is that person walking their dog and their cat?
Oh my God. Hey, kitty.
And now Freya's decided that she likes it.
It's got a home.
I know, it's got a collar and a bell.
It's got a collar. Oh my
I thought maybe when we get to the house, because it'll let me pet it. So
yeah.
It's super friendly. It came right up to me and rubbed on my legs when it saw us walking.
People were like, that guy's walking a dog and a cat together. That's so weird. I don't know. I guess that's what happens when you name your dog Freya.
People are like driving by and looking.
Oh my gosh. That's a pretty cat.
Mm-hmm. And now Freya's protective. When he wanders off to go look at things, she follows the cat to make sure it's all right.
Of course she does. It's the kind of girl she is.
Yeah, because at first she was kind of a little nervous, but now she's like the kitty's protector.
You made a little friend, didn't you, Freya? She's happy as can be. All right, let's figure out who you belong to, friend. After doing our absolute due diligence to find the owners with no luck, we had a new cat. Through social media and pet finder sites, we discovered that someone had a litter of kittens. They put collars and flea collars on and basically just dumped them all over town. This little gal was one of them. So now we have Grimalkin and Pyewacket, and Freya the dog couldn't be happier because, as her namesake, she loves cats. Pie is also Freya's best friend. She's really Freya's cat after all. Give me a thumbs up for this cat who just basically walked in and took over our whole lives. Now that you know the history of cats and witches, I hope you'll join me in part 2 of the series to learn to tap into this ancient connection between cats and witches in your spell work. I will be showing you how you can include cat candles, cat-inspired oils, herbs, statues, deities, and even your own feline friend can join you in your magic. Watch for Cat Magic Part 2, Spellwork for Black Cats and Witches. No matter what kind of cat your roommate is, it will be ready in about a week or so after this video. Also, be sure to share this video with that friend. You know, the one who loves cats and loves a story about magic. Thanks again for visiting me here in the Witches Studio. I will see you next time. But until then, I hope that you stay safe, happy, and healthy. And remember, as always, to be your magic. Bye, everybody. It's true that cats do keep the roses population down. Roses. No, that's not right. Modern. Some of the superstitions still remained when cats transitioned from demonic